just refresh where we stopped the last time. Let's do more or less like a recap of where we stopped. Trying to see where I can put my face. Okay, so let's do a recap. Last time we talked about, remember before now, we've talked about storage, right? S3 itself as an object storage. And I think we did on Sunday, we really had a great time, showing things in our S3 bucket and seeing exactly how it relates, right? And then we also saw how we could, I think we've seen how we could actually do static content with S3, right? So just static hosting. And then I think in the last class, we replaced that with CloudFront, saying the reason is just because CloudFront is really edge. It's optimized for the edge, right? And edge is just the fact that your origin is somewhere, but your edge are closer to the end user. And for the most part, instead of your end users going to your origin, they can't get data from your edge, right? And there's like a cache that happened at that layer, right? So that's really CloudFront in a nutshell. And we said, but when you compare them and compare it with S3, cross-region replication, we said one is really for replication and backup. It shouldn't be confused for global content delivery. We also said when you ever talk about caching data, that's where CDN comes in, right? CloudFront. And it's different from like near real-time replicating data, right? We also talked about the use case is really static content. Here is for disaster recovery or compliance. Performance edge is a big thing, right? Because that's the whole idea of like being in the cloud, being on AWS. The fact that they have this vast network that you can leverage is what gives CloudFront the edge that it has, right? But cross region is just basically a replica of your data that is in a different place, right? And we also talked about the payment. So today we're just going to be switching. Remember, we're still talking about, first of all, we talked about hybrid, like storage, like hybrid storage, number one. And then we started talking about edge computing, right? So one edge computing that we've talked about is CloudFront. Today we're going to be talking about Global Accelerator. Um, both of them, some people think they are similar, kind of like they are similar in terms of they're trying to basically solve improvements, right? Improvement to your application. Um, but it's just that Global Accelerator does it differently. And that's really what I want to share in this call. So I think if you look at how we've seen CloudFront, CloudFront basically does caching, right? It does it basically at layer 7, right? But when you think about Global Accelerator is a network, it operates at the network layer, right? So layer 4. And what it does is basically, it's just there to improve your application performance. And how does it do this? Usually when you check a domain, for example, the way the internet works, you want to go to a particular domain. That domain eventually will route, it will resolve to an IP address, right? And then the internet will do the best, all the ISPs involved will do their best to route you to where the IP address is, right? Um, so there's a lot of routing that happens, right? Sometimes, depending on where the data is, it can take time, right? And that's the problem Global Accelerator tries to do, because what it does is that it's a networking device that AWS has that can actually improve your network, your application performance, and it does that really, really well. What does it do? So it basically bypasses all the loops that you would have done if you were just trying to look for where the data is coming. And what Global Accelerator does is that it resolves to two IPs that are almost similar, right, across the edge locations. So what it means is that once you deploy your application behind a Global Accelerator, you get two Anycast IPs, and those IPs help you basically to go through the fastest edge location to get to your application. Okay, this is not caching. This is about networking. This is about like how fast you are getting to your origin, right? Using any of the Anycast IPs. And the thing is that it's all powered by the edge locations. So the same edge locations that powers caching is also the edge locations that Global Accelerator uses to route your traffic through the edge network and through the the AWS backbone, right? So all those things, the route that it would have taken if it was in the public space will be shortened, right? And it makes your application really, really fast, right? So up to 60% for TCP UDP traffic. And like I said, it's a layer 4. It's a networking. It operates at the networking layer, right? I think at some point I introduced the OSI layer, talked about layer 7, right? So for CloudFront still operates at layer 7, right? Because it does things like routing, maybe by parts, it does all those intelligence things around application layer. But Global Accelerator is really it operates at layer 4. So the way it works is that it follows the shortest path basically to deliver your solution. So if you think about it, if you have like an application, one is in say US West 2, and then the same application is also being served from US West 1. Now, if your clients, regardless of wherever they are trying to access your application, once they try to resolve your application, it's going to resolve through two IP addresses called the Anycast cast IP addresses, and it's going to route through the closest edge location to that person, right? The person is always the concern here, not the application. It's always the person. And depending on which of those endpoints will serve the traffic faster for the end user, that is the route Global Accelerator is going to take. So it's a way to accelerate your global workload, right? Because when we talk about Global Accelerator, really works when you are really doing multi-region things, right? So more or less like you're deploying an application, but you're also deploying more or less like regions that are actually closer to the end users, and then the users will be routed to the one that is closer and fastest to them, right? So like I said, there's a lot of improvement that comes with it in terms of like the improvements that you get from that TCP UDP routing that happens, and then works with your ALB, NLB, EC2, Elastic IP addresses, right? And then it does health checks, it does automatic failover. I mean, that is something that you should expect for something that is like that routes traffic, right? So it's able to know when a particular load balancing, it's a particular endpoint is healthy, and that's when it can route traffic to it, right? So if it's not healthy, that endpoint is not going to get the traffic. You can also do DDoS protection with AWS Shield. We've not talked about Shield yet, but it's one of the services that you can integrate with Global Accelerator. So when you think about, so don't confuse both of them. One is caching, but the other one, CloudFront, is really for caching, right? But Global Accelerator is really for the fastest route, right, to get to your traffic, to get to your endpoint, right? So it goes, instead of using all the hops over the internet, it goes through the closest edge location to deliver your backend to you. So when you think about it, if you look at the way this device, the way it is that there is like a global accelerator that you are installing. An end user is trying to use your global accelerator. That person is located wherever, you don't really know, right? But behind the scene, you have like so many load balancers, right, that are in different regions. And what will happen is that once the person goes in, because of that Anycast IPs that you have, it's basically just going to use the quickest edge location, because those IPs will resolve almost to the same. It will resolve across all the edge locations in the AWS network, and then it's going to route you faster to the closest region to you. Okay, not going through all the hops that would have happened if you went through the internet. And there's like a very small device here that shows more or less like your speed test. So yeah, there is a tool here that can show like speed comparison. So here I'm saying if I have 5 MB and I wanted to more or less like files are downloaded. So in this case, I think here is saying that I want to download like 5 MB file, right? And if I start to run the test, it can actually tell me if I was to do it over direct internet, right? You see that here over direct internet is going to take 14% slower. It's going to be 14% slower. But if I use the global accelerator, it's like 14% faster. This is US East 1. But again, you now see how the dynamics begin to change once my, once my region once it begins to use regions that are closer to me. And you can see that as the regions like US West 2 obviously are closer to me, you can see here, you can see like 67% faster if I went through global accelerator as opposed to going through direct internet, right? And you can see here 16% faster. Wow. You can see if I went through EU Central 2, I'll get 83%. So you can imagine if I deploy something, right, and it's in EU Central 2, right, and I was here, it means I'm going to just get 83% faster access, right? Just because I'm in a place where I can just avoid going over the direct internet and just go through the global accelerator, So, and here 44%, 65%, 77%. So, and you can actually check even more regions. And yeah, I don't know. I think there should be obviously Calgary at some point. There is also, yeah. So it just depends on how close I am to like any of these regions. And using the global accelerator, I'm routed quickly to where the data is, as opposed to going through the hops over direct internet to get to my end destination. So that's really what global accelerator is. Okay, it's not for caching, and it works at TCP and UDP, not HTTP and HTTPS, like we know for CloudFront. Okay, let's go back. So I think honestly that's really all I need to tell you about global accelerator. We'll pretty much practice it. So like I said, global accelerator is helpful when you're dealing multi-regions, okay, not one region in this case, because that's the beauty. You want something that is deployed across regions, and you want people to basically be routed to like the region that gives them the fastest result, right? So how do we practice this? So please take note, global accelerator is not free. I'm just showing you this so that just to ingrain the concept. Global accelerator is not free. Many of the things we've been doing before now is free, but global accelerator itself is not free. So you only try these if you have like something in your account, maybe like the credits that we got. For me, I have in this account, so I can basically do it. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to launch an infrastructure in one region, and then launch another infrastructure in another region, and then show you how Global Accelerator can actually switch in between those two places. So let's go back to this. Let's see. It looks like if you look at this graph, I'm trying to look at it says 5 MB, right? So I'm looking at US West to 67% faster, EU Central to 83% faster, right? So maybe we should try, let's see, I don't know. I've not tried this, but let's see which of these, let's try and deploy two things in these two different regions and see which one Global Accelerator takes us to and how it does that. So maybe that's it. So I'm just going to try EU Central 2, and then I'm also going to try US. I usually work from US West 2, so I'll try both. And then I'll try the EU Central 2 also. Let me see for US West 1. Okay, maybe I'll just try US West 1 and US West 2, just to keep everything in the West. Okay, so the first thing I really need to do is I'll go to Beanstalk. I think you guys know Beanstalk by now. I think I've showed you Beanstalk. So I'll open Beanstalk. Beanstalk is regional, right? So it's the regional service. So in this case, I need to choose my region. So I'll go to US West 2, and I'm going to create an Elastic Beanstalk environment. And the whole idea is because you need one of those endpoints, right? Maybe an IP, maybe a load balancer, NLB, application load balancer. You need all that for you to show, for you to demonstrate how Global Accelerator works behind the scene, right? So I'm here. I'm just going to create, maybe I'll call it highly available application. So HA, let me say HA web application. That's what I'm going to call it. I don't really need to give a tag. I'll leave the domain blank, all this. For now, here, for this one, I'm going to choose a Node.js application. So that's what I'm going to be opening. Here, I'm going to use highly available. And the reason is because I actually wanted to launch a load balancer. Okay, so I'm just going to use a highly available. I just needed to launch a load balancer. That's why I'm doing that. So I'm going to do highly available and do next. I think for our test, we didn't really use this approach. So I think I already have these roles in my account. If you don't have, you can just click on create role. It's going to create a new one. I'm going to use the default VPC that is in the account. I'm going to say I need all the subnet enabled. Public IP, maybe I don't need. I don't need to enable the database. So I'm just going to go next. Okay. I'm going to keep all of these as default, right? So I'm not even going to create anything. I'm just going to go with everything. T3 micro, I'm fine. I'm just going to remove the T3, T2 small. I'll leave everything as is. I'm just going to select this for the load balancer subnet. It's asking me what's the load balancer type. I think that's exactly why I'm going this route, because I need an application load balancer. Remember, I told you that Beanstalk is just, if you were ever thinking of a way to quickly just have like an Elastic load balancer, auto scaling group, all those things figured out for you, Elastic Beanstalk is like the quickest way to go. So instead of me creating that setup, I'll just use Elastic Beanstalk. So in this case, listeners is over 80 in this case. Processes, I'm not really going to do all this. I don't need them. So I'm just going to go next. I'm going to keep every other thing default, honestly. There's nothing I'm setting here. I'm just going to do next. So this will deploy an engineer's application. So it's showing me to confirm. I'm going to create. So it's creating. And I think you're aware that when this starts, if you go to CloudFormation, so when this process starts and you go to CloudFormation, you basically would see, if I go to CloudFormation, you will see a stack that is being brought up, right? So here you will see it's creating, right? And the most important things is really you need to look at the events. I don't really care, but sometimes you need to look at the resources that are being brought up. So security group, a load balancer is being brought up, right? Which is really the most important thing I'm looking at for. There's a target group. You remember these things are things we would have set up ourselves. So if I go to, so we'll just give it time, let it be loading. So let's see. So there's an auto scaling group being created for us, right? Because we needed an Elastic Beanstalk environment that uses highly available setup. So it's doing this. While this is happening, I'll go to US West 1. Okay, so I'll go back to US West 1. Remember, we wanted to see Global Accelerator work for both US West 1 and US West 2, right? So I'm going to now go to US, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to go to, so I'm here in US West 2. I don't have any stack. So I'm going to go again to Beanstalk, okay? So I'm going to go to Beanstalk. And here I'm in Beanstalk in US West 1, right? So you can see I don't have any application here. Okay, so there are no applications, so I can create one. So I'll call it HA, like say HA web application, right? I'll leave the description as is for now. Yeah, so sometimes this I basically need to, I don't know why create an environment for the application. I will just go to sample application in this case. But again, there we used Node.js. So I'm going to use Python just so that you see it's two different applications in two different regions. So it's a sample application. It's an highly available application. I'm just going to do next. So it's using the same roles. You can create one if you don't have. Take note of the region. I'm actually not inside of I'm not in, what do you call it? I'm actually in a different region entirely. So just that's what you need to take note of. So I'm just going to do this. Here, there are not even a lot of subnets. So just two subnets, which is fine. It will work for our use case. I'm just going to go next. Next, I'm going to keep everything as is. Here, I didn't really edit the other one. I can also leave it. I don't mind. On demand, I can remove this one. I just need the 3 macros. I'm going to enable all these for the load balancing subnets. That's really the most important thing. And then I'm going to go next, right? I'm going to keep the metrics. So these are just metrics, like if you wanted metrics, email address to receive notification from your environment, and then the deployment type, right? Usually the way deployment works is that, remember, these things are backed by an EC2 instance, and sometimes you probably need to update, right? Update your application. And sometimes this is where you specify exactly how that update should happen, whether it's like a rolling update all at once, rolling with additional back. We'll talk about that. Some of these things at maybe complex level, but for now, we can just go with the default, okay? And then I'm just going to go next, right? So I'm using a sample application. So, and then I'm just going to create this one. So this again is going to start launching a new application in not, I think it's US West. This is US West 1. Cool. So let's go back to US West 2 and let's see. I think this environment is still being set up. Okay. So if I check this domain, nothing is happening yet. So that gives me the impression that, yeah, you can see bad gateway. It just means that the environment is still being set up, right? It hasn't established a connection yet to it hasn't established connection yet to the backend. So we'll give it time. And then remember, in US West 1, we also have a Beanstalk environment that is coming up. So we'll just give that one time to load. But if you go back, like I said, I think one thing you'll notice is that let's see, auto scaling groups EC2 feature. So this is US West 2, and I said it's so just know that Elastic Beanstalk can do all these things for you. So you can see it creates an auto scaling group for us, right? So if we also go to things like target groups, there is one target group for the EC2 instances that we're loading, right? There is also a load balancer, right? So internet facing load balancer that is going to be receiving traffic on our behalf. So so these are things that we would have created, right? We would have created all this integration, create the ALB, create the target group, connect them, create the more or less like the listener rules and everything. But you can do that easily just with Elastic Beanstalk because it will create all that for you. So let's see, what about this environment? Is it still loading yet? Sometimes it just takes time to load. So it's launching your environment. This will take a few minutes. Yeah, let's just give it some time to load. So let's go back to the image I shared here. Let's go back to this. So if you look at what I'm doing right now, it's kind of similar to what is being shared here, right? So there is going to be a global accelerator. We've not started doing that yet. So what we did is at the rightmost. What we did is basically in this case, we used Elastic Beanstalk. So we use Elastic Beanstalk in this case to more or less like come up with here. I'm using the network load balancer in the diagram, but it's basically we show that network load balancer, ALB, they're all targets for a global accelerator, right? So so what we did is that in one region we used Beanstalk to set up an environment just for it to give us the load balancer that we need, create the EC2 instance, create the auto scaling group. Right now we're using a sample application, and we also went to another region. We used Beanstalk to do the same, right? So we are just waiting for those two endpoints to be available, meaning two load balancing endpoints to be available, right? And those actually become targets for the global accelerator, because like I mentioned, global accelerator it's helpful if you have like multi-region setup where you want the users to be routed to the fastest origin using the AWS global network, right? So let's go back and see if this is going to it still takes time. Not sure why. Sometimes it just it's here. It shows it's still pending. Let's see the EC2 instance that was created. Sometimes it takes time, like instances running. There's really one instance that should be running, and it's also the health check. Let's see. So one instance is running. Let's just go to the target group and see what's happening there. And that's why the experience of understanding how target group, and how targets work, right? Because now you can actually go there and see the things it has created for you. Right now I'm seeing health check has failed. I'm not sure why, but it also doesn't say it's like a timeout or security group issue. Maybe it just needs time. So let me see health checks. 5 consecutive threshold, right? I'm not sure if I need that much. Maybe I can just edit this to I'm not sure I'm not sure. Let's just give it time. Usually it takes a while for it to load. It takes a while. It's nothing we need to do. Maybe it's just a wait game, but I can also just edit the rule to see if we could fasten the health check. Right. So right now there is just let me see if there is something I can actually do too. Let me just silence this a bit. Uh, okay. So let's go to a health check and see if I can actually reduce this. So bring this down to 2, bring this down to 2, timeout 2, interval 5 seconds. Try to just reduce these things, right? And down here, we've taken it to the minimum. While we are there, let's also go back to our old region, right? And see what is being, so we'll check Beanstalk here. So it's still pending. This one is a Python application. We don't even have a URL, we don't even have like a domain to test yet. Okay, so let's give it some time. This one is still here and doing its thing. Let's just give it some time. Remember, if I was to do this, I think it's just going to take time. It's just going to take time to do. Don't worry. I think the SG is fine. The SG is fine. The SG is fine because if you go to the instance, for example, here, and this is the reason why you need to know these things on their own before you can now put something on top of it, because now you can appreciate it, right? So if you go to the SG, I'm sure there's like a security group that says 80 from something else, right? So if I go to the source itself, and I check, you know, what this source is, you can see it's like a load balancer security group. So it's a security group from the load balancer that is allowed traffic, right? And if you see this one, we obviously have like from the internet. I think we've seen this typical setup, right? Where the load balancers traffic from the internet, and then the EC2 instances will have traffic from the load balancer allowed, right? So all that is just a setup that AWS understands and Elastic Beanstalk can reproduce for you. So I don't think anything is wrong with the setup. I think it's just a wait game sometimes. Not sure why it takes some time to just show that it's healthy. Not sure. Health checks failed. Okay, let me see something. This is the instance. Let's play with the security group. And I think if I'm patient, this thing is going to load. Like if it's going to load. This gateways is a this bad gateway is always like it couldn't get. It's not like it's a timeout. It's not like the timeout will usually tell you security group is having problem. But this is just telling me that the application itself behind. Remember, we're using the sample application. We're not using like our own AMI where um so we're not using like our own AMI where it's it can just load very fast. This one is using more or less like a custom application that needs to. So here it just tells me that the application itself is not ready. That's just 502 error. Okay. Usually it takes time. I'm not sure why that one is still. This one has an environment that is also loading. Let's see what we're going to get from this environment. Same issue. So both of them 502. But if we go back to the environment, it says severe. Blah, 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 no instances are healthy. Yeah. Let me see. I think okay. Let me try something. Let me just go to the security group of the instance, which is let me see. Let's go to the EC2 instance itself. So go here. Instance is here. Let me refresh this again. For the most part, it's like a wait game. I don't know why that delay happened. Remember, right now we're using the sample application, so there's nothing much we can do. Ideally, if I wanted to make this fast, we could just use our own test and just use something that has like a let me see. This is a security group. Yeah, this one is security group. Let me just edit this one. But I'm sure this is not a problem. I'm very sure this is not a problem. Um, I'm sure bad gateway is always not. It's not a security group issue. Let's see. For instance, ascending data are not available for all instance. It's launching your environment. Yeah, I think it's a wait game. I've seen this happen before. It's a wait game. You just need to wait. Give it some time. Added this instance. Blah blah blah. And I didn't even enable logs. Maybe we should have seen what's going on in the logs, right? So like it's another way you can actually enable login for your Beanstalk. 502, it's no internet access. Can you SSH into it? I don't think that's the issue. That's not that it's not SSH. It doesn't need it's not internet issue. Just let's give it time. It's usually like it takes some time to load. So uh, remember, this is like a standard setup, right? So this is something that we did from Beanstalk. We didn't really create. So it's like using a sample application. Ideally, it should just load. I'm not sure what the issue is in this case. And some of these things are actually easy to reproduce. So if I go back to the EC2 instance, let's see. Let's go to the EC2 instance, for example. I'm just going to go to the networking and manage the IP address. Here, I'm just going to pretty much assign it a public IP address, just to test the EC2 instance in isolation so that we know if the EC2 instance itself is working as expected or not. So just do this, and I don't think I copied that properly. Let me copy it, and then let me just go to a new tab and paste this, right? Let me see, I think it's, oh, it's even copied. It's copied correctly already, so I don't need to do this. I think I can just paste it, right? Let's see. Site cannot be reached. Why? Let's see, security group. All traffic. Yeah, I told you it's just a wait game. The application itself wasn't loaded. So it's just a wait game. I don't know why it takes time. Remember, we're really using our own setup. So yeah, it's just a wait game basically. So you can see it's now loading, right? So it's now loading. What about this one? Um, yeah, this one is loading. So this one is the one from US West 2 that is loading. What about this one? Let's try something. So let's go. Let's just see if we can get it run fast right now. So I'm just going to go here to the EC2 instance, for example, and yeah, pretty much manage the networking and do something here. Assign, nope, undo this one, assign a public IP. Just give it one, and let's see. This is going to make it work. Yeah, it should work. I think if I undo some of these changes that I'm making, I think I'm just not being patient here. If I was patient enough, if I give it time, it's going to work. There's nothing I'm doing new that is like new. All the setup that is here should just work out of the box. Yeah. So this one, so you can see it's two different applications, right? So this one is the one from Python, right? And then this one is really the one from, what do you call it? This is the one from Node.js, okay? And if you think about these two applications, one is in US West 2, right? So one is hosted in US West 2, and the second one is actually hosted in US West 1, right? So now, remember, all this is not the topic, right? We just use both to get two, more or less like two endpoints, two load balancing endpoints. So our business is really to go and get a global accelerator. So I'm going to search global accelerator here, and then I'm going to create one. So just going to create a global accelerator and say my accelerator, accelerator, okay? And here, standard routing, IPv4 is really it. I'm not going to use, here you can bring your own IP address if you wanted. I'm just going to leave the defaults. Here is where I'm going to be choosing, you can see it's UDP and TCP and UDP, right? So it doesn't operate on the, I don't really need to care about the client affinity. Region, in this case, I'm in US West 2, right? So Global Accelerator is a global service. Also, one thing you need to notice, right? But I still need to decide where are my origins. So in this case, I know there is one in US West 2, right? And for that one, yeah, 100%, right? So traffic dial is 100%. I'm just going to go next, and then I'm just now going to add an endpoint, right? So I did create like a listener, like something that's listening on that. And then here's where you see the options that we have. So there is application load balancer, network load balancer, EC2 instance, Elastic IP address. So in this case, I'm just going to use application load balancer. That's exactly what we are testing with. It picks my load balancer out because it knows that I have one, right? So the weights 0 to 255, I'm going to leave the weight as is. I'm just going to keep everything as is and create. So it's creating a load balancer already. So the good thing about it is that you can already see you have two IP addresses that basically will get you to your application faster, right? two IP addresses. And remember that many, like if you were using load balancer, that's one of the difference. A load balancer will give you a DNS, right? That DNS, the IPs behind it can change, right? But a global accelerator would always have two static IPs. So sometimes the questions are usually around how much you want to, like if you have like IP addresses that needs to be whitelisted from whoever is trying to connect, that's really one very good use case for you to use global accelerator, right? So it's in progress, right? It is kind of loading right now. But remember that we have two, right now we've connected it to the one in US West 2, right? So we've connected it to this one. But there's also one in US West 1, which is a Python application, right? And that we've not connected just yet. So while that is being created, we can go back to the global accelerator and basically just work on it. So we'll go back to the same listener that we have. We already have one endpoint group that goes to US West 2. I think now is for us time for us to add another endpoint group. In this case, we now have to choose a region again, right? And there we'll say US West 1, right? Traffic dial is also 100%. This is where you can control traffic and say 10% go here and all that. So now I'm going to add an endpoint. We know we're working with an application load balancer. The endpoint is really the other load balancer in US West 1, right? I'm going to keep everything as a default and save it. I'm just going to leave it and then give the accelerator time to basically come up. So it's in progress. Let's go back to accelerators. So I'm just going to stay here and wait for it. So it's in progress. So what would happen if we try to go to this URL now? So if I go to this URL and I try to open it, so far, let's give it time. Right now, yeah, it's still not deployed yet because it's showing that it's in progress. So we just need to give it some time. But just for me to recap what we have done before this point, just because we didn't want to go through the hassle of creating a load balancer on this call, creating a target group, creating an auto-scaling group, but I wanted to really show you that it's something that can stay in front of load balancers, right? And so what we did was quickly use Elastic Beanstalk because that's what it's made of. Like it can actually just assemble an auto-scaling group, a load balancer, a target group, bring all those things together, right? Quickly for you with just basic configuration. So what we did was to do that, and we got this environment that is running in US West 2, and we also did another one for Python. We got this environment that is running in US West 1, and now we're trying to use a global accelerator to combine both of them and see how a user can basically be routed to the fastest one. Okay, so and the accelerator is smart enough. It's just I don't have a VPN on my system. I should have shown you what can happen if I change my location, whereby I become a bit far from one load balancer than the other, and see how the global accelerator will handle it, right? But here I can also refresh again and see if it's deployed yet. Still loading. So let's give it some time. Usually takes some time for it to come up. Let's see. Yeah, it's going to take some time. So let's just give it some time while it's still loading. But it shows in progress. So if you go in, what have we done? We created one listener. We are listening on port 80. That's really what we're doing. And inside of that listener, we have like two endpoints, right? Two endpoint group. The whole idea is that one is going to US West 1, one is going to US West 2. Right now, there's no traffic dial. It's all 100. So you can go to anyone, right, that you feel is the best. And then in one of them, we've already, it shows this is already, you can see, I think the health status is healthy. For this one, this is the one in US West 1. It shows it's healthy. What about the second one? Let's see. Also, it shows it's healthy. So I think it's just a wait game for the accelerator to deploy. It's just taking its time. But I can already see that it has gained connection to the load balancer. So the endpoint has already been established. There's really nothing expected of us at this point than to just wait for the accelerator to be deployed. Right now it's enabled. We have a DNS name, but it's still in progress. Okay, so let's give it some time and then see it come to life. Still in progress. Yeah, usually it takes time. Okay, so it's still in progress. It's really in progress. We just need to wait. But I think the most important thing is really when you go in and you check your listeners and you go into your listeners, the most important thing is really for you to check the head status. So the fact that it's healthy, I mean, that's the most important thing. It means that it can always, switch between, it knows. So the fact that it's healthy, I think, we're just waiting for this endpoint to become available. Let's see. So we're still here trying to, where's the accelerator now? I think it's here. This one is healthy. Yeah, let's just wait. Still in progress. Not sure how long it's going to take, but How can we get EC2 out of the sandbox? Let's see. Yeah, if this was pre-recorded, this is where I would like, just pause the video, wait for the accelerator endpoint to be available, and then restart it. But like we do here, we do many of these things live on the call, so we just have to just be patient. Okay. The most important thing is just for us to wait for the status to change. Once that changes, I think we should be good to test what we have and see some of the things we can also do around Global Accelerator. So I think also some of the things you need to start thinking about is what is really different between Global Accelerator and a load balancer, right? But if you remember, a load balancer is really region scope, right? But the Global Accelerator is really a global service. So it's some because you will now think about it that your accelerator is actually fronting your load balancer. So that's a different pattern entirely. And there are times when this becomes a very good legit pattern for you to use. It's kind of strange that it's taking this long. Created, edited. What's happening? It shouldn't take this. Why is it taking this long? Is it just me not being too patient today? Yeah, that's what happens when you do these things on like live stream. Sometimes you wish it was faster, right? Because right now it doesn't really. I have 2 IP addresses already, but I'm not sure why what do you call it, the resource behind here. So you can see, be using the IP addresses, right? So using the first IP address, I'm already loading, and you can tell that it's loading US West. It's loading the solution in US West too. So I think we're just waiting for the accelerator to be available. But just using the IP address, it is using the US West 2 solution already, right? So let's try the second IP address. But the good thing is that it's going to be very fast because once this is resolved, it goes straight to the AWS backbone and it just routes you through the edge location to the nearest. So if I go through the second IP address, I'll give it time, but it's also loading the same application. So the IP address is actually loading the application. I think it's just it's deployed now. So I'm very sure if we retry this, it's going to work. So if I just refreshed, let's give it some time. It said it's deployed. So it should work this time. Sorry. Let's go back to the accelerator. I just hope I'm actually copying. Yeah, I am copying the right DNS name. Oh, yeah. I think the problem is always okay, HTTP. I don't know. It looked like that first one had HTTP or something like that, maybe. But right now we're being so it's the global accelerator now that is serving the traffic, right? But the question is that why is it loading this one? Yeah, pretty much this is like the fastest, right? As it stands. So it's going this route because it's really the fastest endpoint to get to me. It's considering me, right? I'm sure if someone else opens this, the person might get this variant of the application. So the person might get this one, right? But 2 things we can try. So there are 2 things I really want us to try for Global Accelerator. The first one is we can go here, right? So we can actually go here and tune the dial and say, right now I know it is actually showing this. If I had like a VPN, I probably can try this from a different region to see how it will switch between. It knows, looking at the end user, and can switch it to the fastest. But just having this right now, I can basically go back to the accelerator and say, I know I have all this. I have this listener, and then in the group, this is US West 2. I can actually go here and dial and more or less like go back to the group. So I'm here. I'll just edit the group and do 0. So I'm just going to do 0. What do you think what do you think is going to happen? Because this is US. Which group is this again? Oh no, I think I'm not going to get the result I want. I'm supposed to be editing this and making it 100, but make the other one 0. So I'm doing 100 here, and then here I'm just going to do 0. Okay. So because what we're seeing in the UI is already US West 2. So we just switch the dial on US West 2 to 0. Let's see what US West 1 is going to do. So if I go back to that endpoint and I'm going to do this. No, this is still the load balancer. So if I go back to the Global Accelerator, did anyone notice there was a switch? If you actually notice, there was a quick switch. So it switched back to the one, because now I've more or less like used yes, I've used more or less like 0, 100 to switch it completely to this one. But if I go back there and I go back there and I'd be like, I change this one to 100. Let's change this one to 100. So this is you Yeah, there could be traffic dial. There could be how you're switching in terms of, you can even try, maybe you have a process that's trying it in one region and then replicating the solution to another region, right? So there are many things you can do with the traffic dial, but let's go back and see. Let me see if it's still loading. Where's the accelerator again? It's here, accelerators, it's still in progress. So let's give it some time. Let's see if it's going to switch us back to the region it feels we should ordinarily be seeing the application from. So it's here. Let's refresh. Um, let's give it some time. Usually it takes some time to load. So it's here. Remember, I just went back and I readjusted the dials, right? So kept it at 100 and 100, and then I'm waiting to see what is going to happen in that case. What is going to happen? So usually, Global Accelerator is really something that takes some time to load. So, but let's refresh again. Let's see. It still hasn't changed. It's still in progress here. So let's give it some time. Let's give it some time and see what happens. Still deploying. And then from there, we'll go back and test something else. We'll test, right now we are manually switching the dials, right? But what if there was something that was wrong? Maybe there was like something that was wrong on the application side. Will it be smart enough to just redirect us to where the place that is correct? Let's see. Usually, sometimes this accelerator it takes time. Like, yeah, it's deployed now. Let's refresh. Yeah, now it's keeping us here. It's basically keeping us here. So what I can basically do now is to go back to like the instance, the one of the instance in US West 2, right? Remember that the EC2 instance is here, this one. So what I can do is basically go to the security group. This is me trying to create something that is not working, right? So I'm just going to go back to the EC2 instance. In this case, go to the security group, this one, and then just remove the entire rules, right? So here I'm just going to delete this one, delete this one. Okay, so delete this. Maybe it's better I do that from US West 1 because now it's still showing US West 1. Oh, it's back. Sometimes it's just like I'm not patient, right? It's just like I'm not patient. So if you remember what we did, I switched the dial from 0 to 100 back to 100 to 100, and now it is defaulting back to the place that I should actually get the result from. So ideally, it's going to remain here unless there's like a rule that says I should go elsewhere, right? It's going to use this. But I'm actually trying to simulate something failing. So it could be like a security group rule, maybe that is blocking the traffic. So we're here and we're going to security group. I was trying to edit this. I was trying to delete everything, right? So delete and save. So now what you notice is that right now it's just like we've completely severed one of the links. There is an EC2 instance there. The only problem is that the security group will not allow traffic. So if we go back to the Global Accelerator, what are we going to see? We did that in US West 2. So if I go to US West 2, if we give it time, it's going to tell us that, let me see. It's going to, if I refresh, let's see, just give it some time. Right now, it's still showing it's healthy, but I know that's going to change because if I refresh this, it's going to load forever because I've already removed the security group that allows this page to be loaded, and this is more or less like the ALB, I know, so it's not going to work again. So if you give it some time, um, health checks might not be configured correctly. Have an unhealthy status here, so it looks like it has seen that something is unhealthy. So let's give it some time. Let's see. The one in US West 2, yeah, you can see that switch, right? So now it's showing that particular health. This is we simulated it. It's not like it was meant to happen. So let me move my screen just a bit. So let me move it. So what we did just now, just simulated. It's now making it look like it's no longer healthy, right? So it's here. Now, what do you think is going to happen if I go back to the accelerator? This endpoint is completely gone. So right now, it shouldn't even open this endpoint again. If I switch, it has taken me back to blue, right? Because now green is no longer available, and green will not. Global Accelerator is not going to load the green again. It knows that green is already faulty. So if you go back and check, it's on LD. You can see it's clearly in red. Nothing is going to happen. If I refresh, yeah, nothing is going to happen, and this is going to stay like this. But what is going to happen if I just go back and so it's smart enough, it does your health check too. Although it's connected to two load balancers, but it knows how to check to make sure that those load balancers are healthy, and only the ones that are healthy that it takes the traffic to, right? So if I go back to my rule, I edit the inbound rule for now. I just do for now, just for the sake of this call, I'm just allowing HTTP traffic from everywhere. If I give it some time, also, this is going to turn back to green, and then I'm going to load the region that I'm meant to be seeing. So if I want to test, I can go back here. and try to load this one and see. We just edited the security group, right? So it's here. The inbound rule is really everything. No, the port is wrong. Basically, it should be all traffic. So say the rules, port is wrong. Now it's back. And then if I look at the, what do you call it? If I go back to this one, if you give it time, it's going to switch. But let's check. Let's check the endpoint first and refresh this page and see. We just need to refresh and be sure that it's going to come back to green. It's already even auto refreshing, right? So it just does that every 30 seconds. So you can be patient enough for it to load and show that this is healthy. Once that is done, we can actually reload the page and see if it switches us back. Right now, it's still loading the blue. Let's refresh this. Let's see. Yeah, it's back. It's back to green, right? It's back to green. So now that it's back to green, what do you think is going to happen when we reload this back, right? So it's back to green. So this is always going to be the default place because it knows that this is the fastest place to you, right? But sometimes you can use traffic dial to send it somewhere else, or if something is wrong, maybe another endpoint that is not the ideal one, is more or less like having issues, it still can more or less like move to the one that is healthy, right? Cool. With that said, let's go back to our slide. While we're on this call, usually Global Accelerator, for every hour you're running it, like I said, it's not something you should do free tier. It's not free tier eligible. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to my accelerator. In this case, I'm just going to go here and disable the accelerator. It's going to take some time, but once I disable it, I'm just going to delete it. Yeah, I've already shown you what I want to show. And also on this call, I'm just going to go back to my environments. Remember, I created 2 environments, right? One in US West 2. So I'm just going to terminate the environment. It's asking me if I'm sure of what I want to do. I'm pretty much sure. Just going to paste this, terminate it. And also I'm just going to go to US West 1 now to also just get rid of that Beanstalk environment that I created. Okay, so I'm just going to go to Beanstalk, go here, look for the application that I created. I think it's this one. I'm just going to do terminate environment, put the name. And this is just to make sure that I don't have anything that is lingering and that is going to cost any money. So that one is gone. So I'm just going to give this one time for it to disable. Once it's done, then I'm going to delete it. Okay. So if I go back to this page, it wouldn't work now. None of this is going to load again because we've gotten rid of them. Okay. Even the Global Accelerator, yeah, it's also not going to work. Okay. So let's go back to our slide. View slideshow. So this is exactly what we just showed, right? So we did show a Global Accelerator. You get to Anycast IP address. Those will lead you through the AWS backbone to the closest, so basically to the closest origin to you. And we saw that there was a place you could do speed tests to see if you used the Global Accelerator, how fast it will be, right? Depending on the region you're targeting. So when you compare it to CloudFront, really CloudFront does caching, right? In addition to what it does, right? So you have like an origin. CloudFront does some caching, right, around it, right? But Global Accelerator is not caching. It happens at layer 4, so it's really just proxying your packets, right, through the fastest route, right? So protocols you would normally see CCP, UDP on the Global Accelerator side. CloudFront basically layer 7, right? So HTTPS, right? IoT, gaming, voice over IP. These are very sensitive applications that will make use of that would benefit a lot from Global Accelerator, right? But when you think about CloudFront content, if you're streaming, so static content or you're streaming, right, video streaming and everything, all that, you're not going to benefit for using the Global Accelerator in that regard. IP addresses, CloudFront is dynamic, right? It's usually dynamic. You have like an endpoint behind it. There's really no static IPs, but Global Accelerator, there's usually 2 IPs that will be given to you, and those 2 IPs you can use them for whitelisting. There's so many things you can use those 2 IPs to do, right? And then performance-wise, one is really network optimization. Like I said, Global Accelerator works layer 4, and then the other one also does some network optimization, but there's content caching alongside what it does. So shared responsibility, hybrid, and edge. I think throughout this particular session, we've talked about when you think about like storage, right? Hybrid, whether you have something on premise, you're migrating it to the cloud, whether you're syncing it or you want to just move it one time. And we've looked at all the things that we need depending on our use case. If you're moving it once, Snowmobile can work for you there. We've talked about how you can actually use storage gateway to do hybrid, and we've also talked about data sync, how you can actually use data sync to just push the data to the cloud, right? So, so if you were to think about the AWS responsibility in this regards. All the things we talked about, edge networking, the data centers, like we saw all the routing that was happening, I wasn't responsible, right? But for example, if I was to deploy an on-premise gateway, then I have to more or less like manage that, right? So if you think about like CloudFront, Snow device management, all that is AWS. And then whatever thing you are deploying, like you're managing, once you create them, you have to basically, so like you saw how security groups, I had to ensure that it was working properly. All that I begin to manage them, right? But the backbone itself, AWS handles all that and it does it well. So encryption in transit, um, device security, probably AWS is going to do a lot of that, right? But when you talk about access control, it's still your business to do, right? DDoS protection, WAF availability, those tools are there in AWS. You can use them. You can also choose not to use them. But that's where things like origin security, we talked about it, like CloudFront connection to S3, and then your signed URLs. If you wanted to more or less like expose an object, but publicly using signed credentials, right? And then service health, edge performance, AWS is going to handle that for you. But content performance and cost optimization is still some of the things that you are going to take care of. So when you think about this session, what have we accomplished? We've looked at the storage. The hybrid storage is really what we focused on in this session, right? We talked about storage gateway, hybrid. So whenever you think hybrid, is storage gateway. Now the details can be there, file, volume, tape, and all these types of gateway. But the idea is really hybrid, right? We talked about one-time transfer, like you needed to just transfer. You have to get a device from AWS. I told you that Snowcone has been retired. Snowmobile has been retired. Now it's really Snow Mobile Edge, right? I'm sorry. Um, the Snowball Edge is the device that is now available, right? So only Snowball Edge does it, and you can have like compute optimized or storage optimized depending on the option you take. And data sync, I said, you can use it to just push your data one way, like sync to the cloud. CloudFront, we use that for content delivery, right? Global content delivery using the edge network and connecting with basically your static content, your media device, media files. And then we just saw Global Accelerator, how it brings that network performance, right? So not like it's at the network level, right? And then edge computing, you can basically use that to process data close to the source. And that's where the Snowball Edge comes in. Cool. So that brings us to the end of this class.